it's Kritika. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I recently got back from an amazing trip to Iceland with my family, and if you haven't watched my Iceland vlogs yet, I'll leave a card over here. Be sure to check them out because I worked really hard on those videos. Anyway, ever since I got back, the one question I've been getting asked the most by so many people is how to plan a trip to Iceland and what the budget for my trip was. So I decided to make a whole video about that, and that's what today's video is going to be about. Iceland is such a beautiful country, and if you're planning a trip to Iceland, I hope this video helps you out. So I'm going to be dividing this video into 6 parts, and I'm going to be talking about things you need to consider before you book your trip: your flights, hotel bookings, visa, the budget, and general tips for when you're in Iceland. So without wasting any more time, let's just get started with this video. If you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe and press the bell button to never miss any of my videos. First things first, there are a few things you're going to have to consider before you actually make any bookings. The first thing is you're going to have to decide when you actually want to visit Iceland. So we went in the month of July, and the summer months between June and August is said to be the peak season in Iceland, and that's the best time to visit the country. I think that's because the weather in Iceland is really nice during those months, but also the weather in Iceland is really unpredictable. So when we went, it ended up being really rainy, and it was supposedly the worst summer they had in 100 years. So you can never really be sure with Iceland, but I think June to August is the best time to go. Also, there's daylight pretty much 24 hours of the day in Iceland during summers, so that's another positive because you can start your day early in the morning and end it really late at night and do sightseeing throughout the day. But having said that, if you're keen on seeing the northern lights, it won't really be possible in the summer because, like I said, there's daylight pretty much all the time, and you need night time to see the northern lights. So if you want to see the northern lights, you're going to have to visit Iceland during the winter. But keep in mind that there's only 4-5 hours of daylight during the winter, and it snows a lot, so the weather is really bad. So I don't really know how much sightseeing you can actually do during the winter months. So yeah, that's the first thing you have to consider. Next, you're gonna have to decide how many days you want to spend in Iceland. So we did about 2 weeks in Iceland, and we basically spent those 2 weeks doing a road trip around the ring road of Iceland, covering the entire circumference of the island. But a lot of tourists actually prefer doing just the southern and the southeastern coast of Iceland, and that's a really beautiful part of Iceland. So yeah, you need to decide what all you want to see and accordingly decide how many days you're gonna need. And lastly, based on what all you want to see and how many days you have, you're gonna have to figure out a rough itinerary for each day that you're gonna be spending there. So a lot of people messaged and asked me what the itinerary for my trip was, and if you watch my vlogs, you probably already know it because I was vlogging each day I was there. But yeah, if you want to see it all in written form in one place, we actually booked our tour through this company called Nordic Visitor, and the itinerary is on their website, so I'll leave a link in the description. You can go check it out. Next, you're gonna have to book your flights. So the flights from India to Iceland are really expensive. I don't know why, and we booked our flights about 6-7 months before going, and they were still quite expensive. So I think per head a round trip for us was about 95,000, and I think it was because it was peak season, it was more expensive. So we flew Lufthansa Airlines, and our flight was from Chennai to Frankfurt in Germany, and from Frankfurt to Keflavik, which is about 45 minutes from Reykjavik. So yeah, the flights from India to Iceland are kind of expensive, but I was just checking on this app called Vigo that I've been loving lately, and you can find flights for as cheap as 68,000, 70,000 for a round trip during the peak season, which I think is amazing. The only catch is that you might have a longer layover in some places, but if you're saving 27,000 rupees, I think that's quite an amount you'll be saving, and it's totally worth it. Also, apparently about 50,000 travelers are searching for the cheapest flights and hotels on Vigo every hour, and I recently booked a flight on Vigo as well, which you will see in one of my vlogs that'll come up soon. So yeah, it's quite a reliable site, and I think you should totally check it out if you're booking tickets somewhere. The next thing that we did was making all our bookings, that is booking our hotels, the car that we rented, all the sightseeing, and basically everything else. So we didn't actually do any of these bookings on our own. We contacted this company called Nordic Visitor, which did all the bookings for us, and it was super convenient. So it's up to you to decide if you want to do all of these things on your own or go through a company like Nordic Visitor. I personally feel like for a country like Iceland, it's better to go through a tour operator, especially because outside of Reykjavik, the entire country is quite secluded. So if you make bookings on your own and if you have any issues, I don't know how well you'll be able to deal with it. But a lot of people do make bookings on their own, and I'm sure they do fine as well. So it's totally up to you to decide. Also, since you'll be staying at a different hotel each night, it's kind of difficult to make different hotel bookings for 10 different nights and just coordinate all of that on your own. So I think it's easier to do it through someone else. But having said that, it'll obviously be more more expensive if you go through a company like Nordic Visitor, but I guess that's just the price you pay for the comfort. So they have a lot of different types of tours, and we did a 10-day self-drive tour, which was for about 1500 euros, which is I think 1,25,000 rupees per person, and this covers everything except for your flights, the food that you'll be eating in Iceland, your travel insurance, and the gas that you'll be filling in your car. Also, I think the price varies on different things like the kind of hotels you pick. We had the option of picking between mid-level hotels and high-range hotels, and we picked mid-level hotels because hotels in Iceland in general are really expensive, so we didn't really want to be spending too much money on hotels since we weren't going to be staying in the hotel much. So I'll leave a link to the exact tour that we did in the description below, so you can go check that out. We also wanted to add a couple of extra days to our trip and cover other things, so Nordic Visitor helped us book those things as well. So overall, it was quite a good experience booking everything through them. Next comes the visa. So Iceland is part of the Schengen state, so you'll need a Schengen visa to visit Iceland. So for Iceland, you'll actually have to apply to the Denmark embassy to get the visa, and it's the same form that you have to fill for any other country you visit in the Schengen states. We did everything on our own, and I have to say it was quite a tedious process, so if you don't have the time for it or the patience for it, maybe you should get an agent to do it. But yeah, it took us quite a while to organize all the documents and fill the visa form. The details for all the documents that you need and how to fill the visa form are available on the Denmark embassy's website, so you could check that out. Also, normally I book the visa first and then book the flights and hotels and everything, but for the Schengen visa you have to show them your hotel bookings and your flight bookings and all of that, so we kind of just booked that in advance. I think it is possible to book your hotels without making any payments and cancelling that later after you get your visa, but I don't know if it's possible with flights. So that's something you're gonna have to check. So yeah, the whole process of applying for the visa was quite tedious, but I think it's quite easy to get a Schengen visa if all your documents are proper. Next comes the thing that I've been asked about the most, and it is the budget. So I'm gonna break down our budget into different parts and give you an approximate per person amount. So like I said, the flights were about 95,000 rupees. The tour that we booked through Nordic Visitor was about 1,25,000 rupees, and we also added a couple of additional tours that weren't included in our trip. We added Blue Lagoon, a day trip to Landmannalaugar, 2 extra days in Reykjavik, which means extra hotel stay, and we also did a pub crawl tour in Reykjavik. Apart from this, we also spent money on food and gas. The good thing is that most sightseeing places there don't have an entry fee, so you don't really have to worry about that. But some places do have a parking ticket, so we ended up spending on that as well. We didn't really do any shopping there, so I think that's about everything that we spent on. So in total, I think it came up to about 3,50,000 rupees per person, which is quite expensive. Iceland is actually one of the most expensive countries in the world, but that does not mean that you need 3,50,000 rupees to travel to Iceland for 2 weeks. There are so many different ways in which you can save your money and do this trip for a lot cheaper, and I'm just going to give you a few of my tips. So the first thing is you can save a lot of money on your flights by booking on an app like Vigo, or booking a flight which has a longer layover but is cheaper, and you can save 25,000 rupees, which is quite a lot of money. Another way you can save a lot of money is by not staying in hotels. So in Reykjavik, you can stay in hostels, which are a lot cheaper, but while you're doing the road trip, what a lot of people do is actually get a minivan that is attached to your car, or a caravan where you can sleep. So that saves a lot of money on hotels, and that's, I think, the biggest expense in Iceland. So yeah, if it's just 2 people traveling, I think that's a really convenient way to travel. If it's more than 2 people, I don't know how feasible it'll be, but yeah, it's a great option if it's just 2 people traveling. Another great way to save your money is by renting a 2-wheel drive instead of a 4-wheel drive. So we got a 4-wheel drive because the roads in Iceland in some parts aren't that great. So yeah, it is advisable to get a 4-wheel drive, but 2-wheel drives are a lot cheaper, and a lot of people do road trips on 2-wheel drives as well, so that's something you could consider. Another great way to save money is by carrying your own food, which is something we did. So we basically carried a lot of ready-to-eat food from India, and we basically didn't end up eating out at all for most part of our trip, so that saved us a lot of money. So by doing all of these things, I think you can bring your budget down to about 2 to 2,50,000 rupees, which is, I think, the minimum amount you're going to need to have like a decent trip to Iceland for 2 weeks. Now moving on to some general tips that I have for you if you're traveling to Iceland. The first tip I have for you is that the weather in Iceland is super unpredictable. One minute it's really sunny, the next minute it's pouring, so you need to go prepared accordingly. So carry your raincoats, carry warm clothes even if you're going during summer, carry waterproof shoes, and I think you'll be good. Next, the local currency in Iceland is called Icelandic krona, but you don't really need to convert your money because everywhere you go there's a card machine machine, and Indian credit cards work just fine over there, so you could just use your credit card. Next, when it comes to SIM cards, we only got one SIM card for the entire group. We got it from this company called Nova at the airport, and it was quite expensive. I think it was for about 2000 rupees for 10 GB of data, which is quite a lot. But everywhere you go there's Wi-Fi, and the car we rented also had Wi-Fi, so we didn't really feel the need to have multiple SIM cards. So I think you'll be fine if you just get one SIM card for the entire group. We got pretty good network pretty much everywhere, but there were some stretches on the ring road where there was no network at all, but yeah, for most part we had decent network. The next tip is to have tap water while you're there. This is kind of obvious, but a lot of people end up buying water bottles, which is kind of pointless because the tap water is really good. It's the water coming from the glaciers, so it's really clean and super safe to have. My last tip is to check out the store called Bonus if you need to stock up on food. If you're buying snacks, food or groceries, be sure to buy it at Bonus because it's a discounted store and everything is a lot cheaper there, and it's quite easy to find as well, so keep an eye out for Bonus stores. So with that, we come to the end of this video. I hope you found this video useful, and I hope all your questions about Iceland were answered. If not, be sure to leave them in the comments below and I'll answer them for you. Also, like I said before, if you haven't watched my Iceland vlogs yet, be sure to check them out. I'll leave the link to the playlist in the description below, or you can press the I button here to check it out. Today's shout out goes to Mithali. Thank you so much for all your love on my social media. If you're not following me on my Instagram or Twitter yet, be sure to do that because I post a lot of updates about my life and my travels there as well. Also, be sure to give this video a like if you found it useful, subscribe to my channel and press the bell button so you don't miss any of my videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!